we're going to get into our legit analysis about these picks here. At 58, as I mentioned before, the board was looking pretty fine for the Kansas City Chiefs at 58. They could have really
Oh
gone
yeah.
wherever they wanted to. Edge rusher was looking good. Wide receiver looking good. Linebacker was looking good. Out of those, I would have thought linebacker would have been the last option, but they do go with a linebacker. They went with the linebacker, local guy, Nick Bolton, played at Mizzou. As a Mizzou fan, kind of cool to see one of the guys you really liked watching on Saturdays now play for your team on Sundays. I will admit that is pretty cool. I do have a little bit of bias when it comes to Nick Bolton. I will admit that up front, but I'm also going to admit that this might not be the best pick for the Chiefs in year one. I think that the year one return on this pick is going to be very Willie Gay-esque. And you can go back in the podcast archives. We talked about drafting linebackers at 31. Really goes with drafting the linebacker at 58 here too. Is that he's just not going to see a whole lot of snaps. It's just not going to take a whole lot of snaps away from 56 on the Chiefs. So that's kind of tough where I go back and forth with Nick Bolton, though, really good football player. I'm curious to what you guys think on this pick.
Are we referring to Ben Neiman as number 56 now?
Jordan won't let me say his name, so
okay.
I will let you say whatever you want, but my thing is, I was fine with the linebacker at 58, but
Me too.
Just more of a Jabril Cox linebacker at 58.
Who still hasn't been picked, by the way.
Still hasn't been picked. A guy that
I don't know why
fixes coverage issues and can take maybe some snaps away from 56 in those later sub packages like Nick Bolton. I just don't know. He's not a predominant covered linebacker. Like, I don't trust him in coverage like I would a Jabril Cox. And I'm fine with Nick Bolton being a future Mike for the Chiefs. I don't really have a problem with that. And Jabril Cox, I was fine with that pick if it would have happened at 58, because there's a short-term path to him playing a role and being fun. And there's also a ceiling there. He's going to be a productive player. He's going to start one day. Nick Bolton's going to start one day for the Chiefs.
Yeah.
Could be in a year, could be in 2 years. But the immediate role is unclear. I mean, Brett Veach said he can play the Mike and the Will. I didn't expect him to bring up the Will. I don't see Nick Bolton as a Will. I don't think he has that type of athletic profile. I just don't know. And that's kind of what I'm stuck at. And on top of that, you look at the board that was available, and it kind of compounds that a little bit.
Right.
I think you can see the field year one as the Sam. But
then
you get to the talking points you hear from the Chiefs, and you hear him talk about him playing Will and Mike, and Brett Veach didn't mention Sam. Andy Reid did. He said he could play all three. And you just go, okay, so the Chiefs just drafted a linebacker last year. Where is Willie Gay going to play here, guys? Because personally, for me, I was getting into the idea that what if Willie Gay played Will, and then they get Willie Gay at Will, Hitchens at Mike, Bolton at Sam, and Bolton's rookie year. I'm like, I could get down with that. Mm-hmm. And then they release Hitchens, and Bolton goes to Mike year two. But they seem like they aren't really into that yet. I just don't know exactly what the plan here is. And I don't know the progression of Willie Gay. And Jordan, you look like you really want to say something.
In order to be a Sam in the NFL, especially in Steve Spagnuolo's system, you have to be able to stack and shed. And I don't know about you guys, but I didn't see a lot of stacking. I didn't see a lot of shedding from Willie Gay when he was on the field. Now, with that said, I'm not saying he can't do it, because he obviously has the size to be able to do it. But the draw with Willie Gay, he's athletic. He runs fast. He has potential. At some point, that can't carry your reputation in the NFL. And this is the year to find that out. Like, what's he made of? What is he going to do? But you'd like to hear more glowing reviews about him. Obviously, now words only go so far. But I just don't know. It's tough.
I saw it was at least a bit encouraging that Nate Taylor said he thinks this will take snaps away from Ben Neiman, not 56. From Willie Gay. 56. Mm-hmm. I'm going to say his name. I'm not stopping myself from saying his name, even though he's kind of like Voldemort to me personally. But He did say Ben Neiman was the one who would lose snaps, he thinks. That's the initial report, so we'll see what happens when they get in the training camp and see how Willie Gay and Nick Bolton look. I just question like what the linebacker room will look like. And I just hope that doesn't mean that they wasted a second round pick last year.
I don't think it's going to be like that because it seems like there's more clear of a path to contribution than there was with Willie Gay, right? With Willie Gay, we knew he was an athlete, but we didn't know kind of what his deal was,
That was
right, with
about
the
it.
off the field issues, but we just knew he was an athlete. When it comes to Nick Bolton, we know he's a linebacker. And we know,
He's a
he's good in the
Mike.
run game. Yeah, he's good in the run game. Watching Mizzou football games, the dude's a heavy hitter. Like, he plays downhill. He's a fun football player to watch. It's going to be fun to watch him on Sundays. He's a linebacker. Now, he might not have the athleticism. He didn't test a whole lot very well. I know his RAS score wasn't the best. I'm not putting a whole lot of stock into that because it's kind of a trust the tape type thing. And there wasn't a
Yeah.
whole lot of Mizzou guys that did test well. That's something you have to kind of take into consideration too. Larry Roundtree didn't test well. Tyree Gillespie didn't test well.
It was no LSU.
I mean, it was no LSU. I will say that it was more of a pit, if I could say,
Ooh,
if I mess.
Not a pit.
Yeah.
I will
No
say about
comment.
Willie Gay too. I remember this last year. I didn't see people mention this. Remember when people were parading around Willie Gay's coverage PFF grade last year?
Yeah.
Do you remember what it was? It was like 91.5 or something like that. But I mean, he didn't play a lot in college, so it was kind of a projection there. So we didn't really know. He was getting snaps towards the end of the year last year before he got injured. So it's just like, honestly, the Nick Bolton pick is kind of just the biggest question mark about the Nick Bolton pick is Willie Gay. Because I know Nick Bolton can play at least Sam and Mike. And I am almost certain this means that they want him to play Mike next year and they just cut Anthony Hitchens.
Yeah.
But I think the biggest question mark is, where does Willie Gay play? And that's kind of where we're at right now. And that, I think we will have to wait till training camp to find out.
I don't even know if Steve Spagnuolo or Matt House know where Willie Gay is going to play. I think that's the thing too with him is like, as I already mentioned before, like Willie Gay is an athlete, so he can play really any position on linebacker. So you're just like, okay, now where does he fit in? And I do think that's interesting that you take a guy that does have a role, and then you take a guy who's an athlete too the year before, and you can kind of mold him into a role, if that makes sense. You kind of see that, Jordan?
Yeah, and people, I have to choose my words wisely here. People saw the Willie Gay pick and someone dropped a Derek Johnson comp. And they said, oh, okay, well, I used to play Madden as a kid and Derek Johnson was MLB on my depth chart. So that means Willie Gay is MLB for the Chiefs, which means he can be middle linebacker, Mike linebacker. And it just snowballed from there. Willie Gay, I just don't see him as a future Mike. Not to say that he can't do it or doesn't have the capacity to do it. I just don't see him in that role. He's super athletic. He's not the green dot. He's not that guy that you need captaining the defense necessarily. Now,
Nick Bolton is.
Yes, Nick Bolton is the
Exactly.
guy that you want calling the shots, kind of aligning your formations, getting every piece of information out and processing. He can do that. And he's not as gifted athletically, not even close, as a guy like Willie Gay. They're going to be a really good pairing eventually. This year, it's just interesting. Like Willie Gay last training camp, or I guess heading into the season, whatever, since it was so weird with COVID, he was learning like every role. Like they were asking him, well, what have you been picking up? Well, today I did a little bit of this and then a little bit of that. And then they tried me here and they're telling me this. Like he was so raw as a prospect. He needed an off season as much as any rookie, if not more than pretty much any rookie. So I'm trying not to put a bunch of stock into what I saw from him or didn't see last year. I'm excited for what's ahead. I think I can see a positive outcome from the Nick Bolton pick. Definitely. I could see a negative one from it, but overall, I think the answer is in the middle. Like, was it a home run pick? Definitely not. Was it a horrible pick? No. Just something that, man, you keep coming back to the board. Like that's ultimately what it is for me.
So I want to ask you guys this before we kind of move on and talk about Creed Humphrey. Spend like 20 minutes talking about Creed Humphrey. I could literally do a whole podcast about Creed Humphrey.
I'm down.
But anyway, do you think that this pick is an indictment on Willie Gay? Do you think that this reflects on Willie Gay's inability to pick up the playbook at all, not being able to find the field a little bit? I'm curious what you guys think about that.
I think it's more an indictment on they don't want to pay Anthony Hitchens $13 million next year.
Yeah.
He is cuttable next year. There's about I think it's $4 million in dead cap, but they save $8.5 million by cutting him.
Yeah.
Seems very seems very likely that he's gone next year, because Bolton is a quintessential Mike linebacker, and he will have the green dot and he'll do great with it. He'll be the leader. So I think it's more of an indictment on him, though I think it does call into question a bit Willie Gay and where he'll play and what they're going to do with him. But I think he'll still have a role if he can earn it. So we'll see how he does in training camp and where they want to line him up.
And the thing that people even forget with Anthony Hitchens, it takes a year to get that system down for a lot of guys.
Yeah.
And Nick Bolton's a very bright player. Heck, Anthony Hitchens is a very bright player. He was a totally different guy last season with the Chiefs compared to the year before. So, and I'd be a hypocrite if I went against what I've been saying all along. You don't have to draft for that immediate need. And was the wide receiver board looking pretty tasty? Yes, it was. There were a ton of great options the Chiefs could have chose from there. But if you can save some money in the future, you can get a guy at the importance of linebackers, you can bring up the data, whatever. I think having a smart Mike linebacker, there is value in that to a certain extent. A guy that's going to be productive, local kid. Obviously, some stuff like that doesn't factor into those decisions, but there's definitely, you can justify it, and that's okay, because there have been some Brett Veach picks where it's just not great. you just don't love it, and the guy we're about to talk about combined with Bolton, I like it.
Yeah.
There's been some Veach picks where you just go, man, what is going on in the front office of the Chiefs right now? Bolton, I think I initially reacted to negatively. Now I'm on the fence about it still, but I can see it, and I don't think it's like a Breland Speaks level 1, especially because they didn't trade up or anything for him. So I can get down with it, especially because he's a Mizzou kid. It's not hard to love that.